Many people out there have been speculating on that Meghan Markle has lied about her age. Is she actually older? Is a copy of 17 magazine that was published in March of 1997. In it, it mentions our Megzy from Los Angeles and that she was 21 years old at the time of publication. That would make her birth year at around 1976.
And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies to me.
When I was just 11 years old, I unknowingly and somehow accidentally became a female advocate. A pivotal moment reshaped my notion of what is possible.
She claims that she was 13 years of age when she started to work for Humphrey Yogurt, despite of the fact that Humphrey Yogurt has said that they have never employed anybody age 13. And the hysterectomy stories that her family have told. But that would make it more difficult because that would make Meghan Markle near 50.
Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is not a fairy tale. It's a detonator. A royal detonation that has ripped through the walls of Buckingham Palace like a bomb no one saw coming. For years, the world worshipped her like a modern princess, elegant, untouchable, wrapped in perfection. But tonight, that perfect image is being ripped apart, piece by piece. And the man behind it is none other than Tom Bower, the relentless biographer who doesn't just ask questions. He digs up graves of secrets no one was supposed to find. This isn't about some petty rumor. This is about a hidden chapter buried deep under red carpets and royal portraits. A single dusty magazine page from 1997, a forgotten number printed in black ink, age 21, and a storm that could burn the fairy tale to ashes. Why was that page erased from every archive? Who sealed the truth in an unmarked envelope? And why is everyone inside the palace suddenly quiet? When the mask cracks, the truth doesn't whisper. It screams. And that scream has already reached the palace gates. Tom Bower didn't just uncover a number. He's pulled a thread that could unravel the carefully stitched image of Meghan Markle, a thread soaked in secrets, silence, and calculated deception. This is not just a story. This is a royal crime scene. And when the world finally sees what's behind the golden curtains, everything they thought they knew about Meghan Markle may collapse like a house of cards. Are you ready? This is where the fairy tale ends and the truth begins. They said it was a love story. They sold it like a modern-day fairy tale. But behind the sparkling tiaras and polished smiles, a single forgotten page has now set fire to the palace walls. Tom Bower, the man who never blinks when the truth bleeds, didn't just find a clue. He found a weapon. A silent bomb that had been buried in dust for nearly 3 decades. It started with an envelope. No return address. No name. Just a single sentence stamped on the front. The truth you're not supposed to see. Inside, wrapped in a yellowing plastic sleeve, was a 1997 issue of 17 magazine. On the 3rd page of that glossy cover, a young, beaming Meghan Markle. Next to her face, in black, unforgiving ink, age 21. Not 16. Not 18. 21. Do the math. If that number is real, Meghan wasn't born in 1981, but years earlier. This wasn't just a typo. It was the first crack in the carefully painted royal portrait. And here's where the story takes a sinister turn. Within 48 hours of Tom receiving that envelope, the online archives where that very magazine had once existed vanished. Every cached page, every scanned copy, gone like it had never existed. No official retraction, no statement, just silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than words. Insiders whisper about a shadow cleanup team, a specialized PR force that moves faster than breaking news. Their job isn't to explain, it's to erase. Tom Bower called it what no one else dared to, a royal cover-up. This isn't about a birthday. It's about a timeline that doesn't add up. Because when you change your age, you don't just rewrite a number. You rewrite every chapter connected to it, every job, every audition, every public milestone, every carefully curated smile. And the people who lived beside Meghan Markle? They're not silent anymore. One elderly neighbor, trembling on the verge of tears, said on live TV, "She was always older than she said. We just thought it was Hollywood." But Hollywood wasn't the finish line. It was only the first act. In the early 2000s, casting records mysteriously shifted. Agency bios were edited in real time. One day she was listed as 24, the next week she was 22. Roles designed for younger women somehow landed in her lap. Age wasn't a burden. It was a manipulated currency. And then came the ultimate jackpot, the royal spotlight. That's when the real cleanup began. The moment Meghan Markle was tied to the royal family, old pages began disappearing one after another. Digital footprints wiped. Yearbook records lost. Age references in agency databases quietly updated. Like someone was preparing for the perfect launch of a perfectly engineered princess. But fairy tales don't survive real timelines. They crack. They rot. They bleed. Tom Bower didn't stop at the magazine. He cross-checked school yearbooks, work records, old event flyers, even student union archives. Every thread he pulled led to the same gaping hole. Her public age didn't match her past. And now, the palace isn't denying it. They're not confirming it either. They're doing something far more dangerous. They're staying silent. Silence isn't innocence. Silence is strategy. And that's what's making the world uneasy. Because when a story this big is met with a wall of silence, it means the truth is either too explosive or too real to admit. What started as a dusty magazine page is now a full-blown royal storm. This isn't a rumor. This isn't idle gossip. This is a bomb ticking behind Buckingham's golden gates. And Tom Bower just lit the fuse. When a lie grows too big, it stops whispering and starts shaking everything around it. That's exactly what happened the moment Tom Bower's findings hit the surface. This wasn't just about a number anymore. This was about an entire royal timeline built on sand. The cracks began inside the family itself. While the palace stayed silent, Thomas Markle, Meghan's own father, began speaking with a trembling mix of bitterness and fire. He didn't sit down with stylists. He didn't polish his words for headlines. He just let it burn. In a quiet interview, he looked straight into the camera and said, "I was there when she got her first job. I was there when she said she was 16. But she wasn't. She was already in her 20s. I remember the ID. I remember the year." And then, something even darker surfaced. Old office security logs. A photo ID. A date that shouldn't have existed if the palace version was true. This wasn't conspiracy chatter anymore. This was a paper trail. An old neighbor from Los Angeles broke down on live TV, her voice shaking as she recalled. She was never the age she claimed. Everyone in the block knew. We just didn't talk. You don't talk when power is watching. That single line, "you don't talk when power is watching," spread like wildfire across the internet. #AgeGate wasn't just a hashtag anymore. It was a movement. People started digging. Former coworkers, casting agents, schoolmates. And what they found was worse than anyone imagined. Multiple documents with conflicting birth years. Photos that didn't match official timelines. Events that allegedly happened years before she was supposed to even be there. Then came the Mirror Girl files. A former PR assistant, using a hidden identity, claimed Meghan had been part of a hush-hush image restructuring project long before the royal romance ever happened. A project built on one mission: make her look younger. Make her look perfect. Make her unforgettable. And it worked. For years, Meghan Markle was sold to Hollywood as a fresh new face in her 20s, when in reality, she was already walking a much older road. But nothing prepares the world for what happens when the past fights back. A leak from a private family chat, reportedly between distant relatives, surfaced online. In that leak, one cousin allegedly wrote, "She changed everything, even her birth story. We don't talk about it anymore. She made sure we don't." The room fell silent. Comment sections exploded. And suddenly, this was no longer just a magazine story. It was a full-scale scandal. Palace insiders whispered about damage control units being activated behind the scenes. Not one, but 3 separate legal teams reportedly assigned to contain the fallout. But how do you contain something that's already out in the wild? You can't. Thomas Markle, broken, exhausted, furious, said one final line in a phone interview that turned the internet upside down. "The palace can silence me, but they can't silence the truth." That sentence hit harder than any headline. Because it wasn't a journalist saying it. It was her father. Behind Buckingham's golden gates, insiders say meetings turned tense. Not because of the claims, but because this time, the lie was personal. The timeline was no longer just fragile. It was bleeding. People started to question everything. If the age was hidden, what else was? Who erased the old records? How deep did the PR machine go? This wasn't a fairy tale anymore. It was a surgical operation on a woman's identity, and the stitches were starting to rip. And in the eye of the storm stood Tom Bower, holding a page that refused to disappear. The question now wasn't if the lie existed. The question was how far it had already spread. When silence begins to break, it doesn't whisper. It detonates. For weeks, the palace had watched the storm gather, first a ripple, then a wave, now a tsunami. Tom Bower's discovery was no longer a footnote. It had become a royal earthquake, shaking the very image Buckingham had spent decades protecting. Behind the gates, something snapped. Whispers from royal aides leaked into late-night newsrooms. Meetings that were once elegant tea sessions turned into war rooms. Lawyers stopped smiling. Publicists stopped sleeping. And Meghan Markle stopped appearing. She vanished from the cameras that once adored her. The same cameras she had mastered now waited like vultures for her first misstep. Every hour brought a new crack. A wiped birth record reappeared in a government database, then disappeared again. A hospital log, long thought destroyed, surfaced on an anonymous forum. 2 ex-staffers signed sworn statements about timeline manipulation. It was no longer a theory. It was a leak. One insider called it the biggest royal scramble since Diana. Except this time, there was no car crash. There was a paper crash, files, records, identities, all colliding in real time. Then came the moment no one expected. A royal press secretary, visibly shaken, walked past reporters without speaking a word. But in that silence, the world heard everything. The fairy tale was collapsing. Online, hashtags turned into a digital battlefield. Hashtag Agegate was no longer just a trending topic, it was a movement. Comment sections filled with timelines, screenshots, receipts, and fury. Millions of people around the world were not asking if Meghan had lied. They were asking why. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the strategy wasn't defense anymore. It was containment. Sources described frantic phone calls, high-level negotiations, and a quiet push to buy time. But time doesn't bargain when truth starts bleeding through the cracks. Tom Bower, now under round-the-clock security, stepped forward with his second wave. He released fragments of sealed testimony, whispered accounts from within Meghan's old inner circle. They spoke of deals, image overhauls, and a chilling Line 1 PR executive allegedly said in 2005, "Erase the age, build the icon." Those 5 words hit harder than any headline. Because if that was real, this wasn't just personal. It was engineered. Across the world, analysts compared the unfolding chaos to a script, except this time, the script was real and no one was in control of the ending. A royal source, in a panicked call to a journalist, reportedly said, "We thought we buried this years ago. We were wrong." The fairy tale had become a funeral march. And then, like a lightning strike, came the final blow. The very magazine page that started it all, the 1997-17 cover, was released publicly, this time with authenticated archival tags. No more rumors. No more speculation. It was real. The internet exploded. News anchors lost their calm. Royal biographers called it a fracture in the institution's spine. Within minutes, the palace issued a statement, cold, controlled, painfully short. No further comment. That was the last straw. People don't trust silence anymore. They feed on it. By nightfall, Buckingham's golden facade wasn't glowing. It was trembling. This wasn't about a woman lying about her age. This was about a machine that erased truth to build an empire. And now, the machine had lost control of its own creation. Tom Bower stood before flashing cameras, not with drama in his voice, but ice in his words. The crown cracked the moment it decided to protect the lie. The world was no longer watching a fairy tale. They were watching it burn. And as the palace lights dimmed, one question echoed louder than any royal anthem. If Meghan Markle's age wasn't real, What else wasn't? And now, the fairy tale isn't just cracked, it's bleeding. This isn't a story about a magazine page anymore. This is about power, silence, and a system that erased the truth and expected the world to never notice. Tom Bauer didn't just uncover a number. He ripped open a wound the palace tried to bury under diamonds and gold. And no matter how many press statements they hide behind, no matter how many archives they scrub, the truth is out. The image of the perfect princess is gone. What's left is a trail of secrets, manipulation, and a machine that failed to keep control. For years, we saw a smile. Tonight, we see the shadow behind it. And now it's your turn. Do you believe the fairy tale or the fracture? Do you stand with the story they sold or the truth they buried? Drop your thoughts. Make your voice heard. Because history isn't written by those who stay silent. It's written by those who refuse to look away. This isn't the end of the story. This is where the curtain falls and the truth walks in.